Hello. Continuing our discussion today with John Bool and Andy Preston, we're going to start by looking at the support that our regulator has given us, talking about how government has supported us. We're then going to move on to the thorny subject of Brexit, and maybe a little discussion on next generation. So, over to you guys. Change of tone here, talking about regulators and government. How have you found working through with the CAA during this period? Have they supported what you needed? Andy, I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah, I think ultimately we whilst it's obvious that they've had resourcing staff issues, they've got the same restrictions on being able to work like they used to in terms of things like physical audits, etc. Simon and I have not found a lot of difference in terms of certainly the response. Our surveyor has been he's been communicative, he's been on top of things. We've already done at least one virtual desktop audit for Part M. We've got our 145 audit planned in early August the same way. It's been functional. I don't think it's as effective as it is when you're face to face with someone. But at the moment I can't complain too much about the CAA. I think what we're all concerned about is what's the long term picture with EASA, Brexit, and what's that going to cause for us moving forward. But up to now through the pandemic, Mark, we haven't suffered from lack of support when we've needed it at the moment.
Oh, that is good and positive to hear. I'll come back to the B word a little later.
I thought you might.
John, how's it been with you and our colleagues at the CAA?
I think one of the words Andy used there was functional. I think that's all I would say it is. I think they're working under the restrictions that they have to. We have seen regular communications with our surveyor, which is good. As we know that they're working mainly from home now, but I haven't seen a huge change from where we were, which is good news. And they're still remaining in contact. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes forward, or whether their current model is sustainable.
Yeah, I haven't picked up any negative comments across industry in terms of getting the support, the extensions that people have needed, and doing the functional stuff. The real question mark is this something we can carry on doing the way that we're doing, or do we have to look for something new going forward? And a lot of people are saying it's probably something we're going to need to develop and look at a new way to do our work to make it effective for both industry and regulator. So we'll have to see how that develops. In fact, there's a potential working group being set up to look at this in the coming months. So, but positive to hear that you've actually been reasonably well supported from our regulator. Now, here comes a difficult one, and this really is shooting fish in a barrel, but how has the business support been for you from either local government or national government? What help have you managed to secure?
That's a very good, interesting question, Mark. Support-wise, I have to say, and I don't want to be too critical, but I think the airports could have been a little bit more supportive of us. I know the managing director has tried with limited success in some areas to get some movement on things like on rents and ground rents. That's always a challenge when you shut down and you're working at major airports. These are significant costs. So I think that's been our only disappointment. And it's been the only area that we've been trying hard to work with the airports on. Hopefully something longer term will come out of it. But as we know, it's both London Stansted and London Luton are expensive places to work at. And I fully appreciate that they have their costs to bear in mind as well. But that has been a bit of a challenge for us.
Yeah, there is a balance. There's give and take, but not just take.
Yes. Yeah.
Andy, What have you found?
Well, I think, from the overall perspective, I think, let's take politics out of this, because this pandemic is an extremely unique situation for anybody. I think the government have done what they've had to do at the time. Is it right? Is it wrong? Lots of people will question this afterwards, but they have gone out and tried to help. Now, have they helped our industry specifically? I think that's the one area where we'd all agree we need a bit more voice in at the government level. But I think from the protection of our people, I think the furlough scheme has helped an awful lot of people in the industry. I think it will continue to do through October, and I think that's important for businesses to survive. I don't personally have had any issue, but through ourselves and Signature, our parent company, we've managed everything, in line with the government support, and I think I had no negative feedback through our HR people in actually exercising any of these schemes. It's all been relatively straightforward, easy to work with. But it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's unprecedented. We've never been through this in a non-wartime situation where such upheaval. And I again, crystal ball aside, how long this is going to play out and how much it's going to cost us in the long term, we don't know yet. We've just got to try and, as you call it, the new norm, adapt and make sure that we've got one eye on how we are able to manage the future in the near future, because it's going to keep evolving, it's going to keep changing. So,
no, they're fair points, and it's very easy for people to pick on government. I think anyone would struggle in the current conditions, and I'm sure it could be a lot worse. We've seen a lot worse around the world. So
yeah,
grateful for where we are. Look, the last couple of questions, and I did say I would come back to it. We've got this thing sneaking up on the rails called Brexit. And we never thought that we'd stop talking about it until we faced what we've just been facing. But it's hurtling along at the end of the year. And from what we're hearing is it's looking very much like a hard Brexit, non-negotiated settlement. What's that going to mean to your business? I'm going to come to you, John. How are you going to deal with it? And is there anything else that you're expecting out of government and its agencies in this process?
There's a number of very good questions, Mark. I think for us as a business, the majority of aircraft we do are non-UK aircraft. It's a fact, matter of fact for us, most of the aircraft are European, from European mainland. So we immediately had to do something to get ourselves positioned so that if it was a hard Brexit, we could continue to operate and maintain that custom base. So we have put in place the foreign repair station. It does worry me somewhat about the costs will be for that. And certainly the restrictions, some of the restrictions that we're hearing about that may follow along with that. But it also then, if you think of, if we're allowed to continue with a foreign repair station, where does that leave the British regulator? And how will he be able to manage going forward? Which I think we all know that is going to be a challenge for the regulator. And I'm sure they will face it, and they will step up to that. But there's bound to be some fallout in the short term, and I do think it's the maintenance organisations that are going to bear some of the pain with that.
I think we're waiting to see whether there's going to be any transition in terms of release documentation, interchangeability of staff, all of those sort of things where we were promised transition periods. Yes. We don't know how firm the hard means at this point in time. So
there are so many unanswered questions in that area, exactly how it's all going to mold together. So not too long to go either.
No, it's hurtling up. Andy, how about for you?
Yeah, I think it's a very similar situation to John. I think we did the same thing. You know, we were preparing for a hard Brexit last time, so we've got foreign repair stations all pending. You know, anything changing over the next few months. But you know, looking ahead, it's really about where does the CAA fit in EASA. If it's out, which is looking likely, it's vitally important that we get the bilateral agreement in place with the EU as the UK. I think that's, you hear rumours that it's all done, it's ready to sign, then you don't hear about it. But you know, from a transition perspective, I think John's absolutely right in that, you know, the UK CAA will step up, but it's about resourcing. If suddenly they've got to take over everything, you know, something's going to give at some point, you know, and if we're at least following exactly the same rules that we've been following within EASA for the first year or so, that would help. So I think, you know, I think that's the key thing. If they can get a bilateral in place, which essentially mirrors what we've got now, it buys some time. Notwithstanding, you know, have you got a French license or a UK CAA license? Can you work on a G reg? Can you work on a D reg? I think we're all within the 145s. We'll manage that and have already planned for that. I think it's just a case of making sure that we don't end up working immediately overnight to a different set of regulations to the rest of the EASA. That's going to be the key.
Yeah, the one thing that we're desperately going to do as industry representation is to try and encourage CAA not to diverge at all. We don't want additional national requirements coming back or more stringent measures or anything like that. We want to stay parallel to it because we're a global, you know, business, and we need to be able to move things and people around without little barriers being added. I think they may be different from a previous generation, so fingers crossed on that front. Right, we're hurtling to the end. The last question before I let you guys get on with your version of lockdown, and that is, for all of our members, are there any things that you think they should be thinking about from this point onwards? Any little nuggets of advice you'd like to give to them? I'm going to come to you first, Sean.
Nuggets of advice. We talked about having the processes in place to work from home. I do think that's an important one that businesses spend a bit more time thinking about that. Clearly, the types of way we work in the future will change. And that type of technology, I think we're going to have to develop further.
Okay, good point. Andy, to you.
Yeah, no, I would agree. That's a very good point. And I think that we touched on that earlier. I think the new norm will certainly include a lot more virtual sort of communications, you know, rather than face-to-face, whether that's within your own organisation or between organisations, whether it be customers, whether it be regulatory authorities. I think, you know, a good point we just made, I think, is the CAA are going to take a while to ramp up their capacity. I think we'll see a continued virtual communication channel with them as that happens, because they just won't have enough people to come out and do everything. So, you know, those organisations that they deem perhaps, you know, slightly more reputable than others, they'll take a different view to than actually travelling to all the time. I think the other thing I wanted to pick up, and John mentioned it about when we were talking about cost-cutting, and he mentioned apprentices and training. We talked about there being obviously, there'll be a lot more people on the market from a maintenance perspective. I think we mustn't lose focus of the demographic of our industry and the age group and the experience levels. We've already got a massive hole now. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that maybe very disappointingly had to lose their jobs at the moment is that they are still only going to be working for maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. We still need to keep an eye on how we grow the new ones. And I think, you know, apprentices and training is still massively important. We still need, you know, there's a lot of people in other walks of life that are going to have career changes. Well, why not engineering? You know, that sort of stuff. So I think that would be one of my strong messages is it's a very difficult time. There is going to be a lot of people on the market, but let's not forget the longer term future of our industry, because we've neglected it for a long time over the last 20 years in terms of generating new talent. And I think that's still vital over the longer period.
Well, I can't add to that in any shape. That is a great way to close it, and it's a good reminder to everybody that we really have got to mind this very, very carefully going forward. So, great point, well made. Thank you very much to you, John, and to you, Andy, for taking the time for this discussion today.
Thank you, Mark.
Hopefully that's given some insights to people and some encouragement for what we've got to do going forward. Have a great day, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, John. Take care.
Cheers, Andy.
Bye.